Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day as we continue through the third week of Lent. Let this Lenten discipline really lead us to know you more, to serve you more, to glorify your name, and to grow in holiness so that we may become more like you in our service to our neighbors and to love them as we seek to love you. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today, of course, is Tuesday of the third week of Lent, and we have another famous story, the story is quite famous. We actually have a little bit that follows it from today's first reading, and this comes from the story of Daniel the prophet. Now, it's a similar perspective, although a completely different story than yesterday. Remember, yesterday we had Naaman the Syrian. And Naaman the Syrian came from Syria, obviously. And he goes and visits, ultimately, the prophet, who was Elisha, who tells him to dip in the water 7 times in the Jordan. And he's like all in a huff. We have water in the Syria. Why should I come here and dip in the water here? And that whole nationalistic, why are we worshiping your gods and we have some of our own at home? And he is healed. And so this is a powerful experience. And he comes to realize that the God of the Jews is real. Well, we have a similar reality here, same dynamic, completely different setting, but same dynamic. And this is Daniel. It takes place during the Babylonian exile. And you have these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who are before King Nebuchadnezzar, and King Nebuchadnezzar wants them to worship his gods. Obviously, they're in Babylon, and they have to worship the Babylonian gods, and they say no. They are only going to worship the God of the Jews, which angers Nebuchadnezzar, and in doing so, he gets so angry that he orders them to be thrown into a furnace. And he orders the furnace to be so hot, the whitest hot it can possibly be. This is the most destructive form of heat. He wants this super, super, super hot because he wants to punish these men for not worshiping the gods of the Babylonians. Now, understand there's a lot going on with that. Because, obviously, King Nebuchadnezzar is loyal to his own gods. Obviously, the Jews recognize that they're all false. There aren't really any real gods of the best Babylonians. And so now you have this standoff. But what if King Nebuchadnezzar turns around and says, that's okay, I don't mind? Then what is he saying to the God that he believes in? He, in his mind, is betraying him. So he has to be loyal to this God because this God will not be loyal to him if he's not loyal to this God. That's his mindset. And so he makes it very clear that he is going to essentially sacrifice these men to his God in a powerful and vicious way so that his God understands that he is loyal to him. And so in doing so, he orders this furnace to be made white hot and the 3 men to be thrown into it. And in doing so, they throw the 3 men into it, and not only do they not burn, but now there's a 4th figure in there, which turns out to be an angel, and they're fine. They're fine, and today's reading is them inside the fire, while in the fire, praising God and giving a blessing to God for all he has done for them. Now, it's important to see this within context as well, because you want to understand this whole teaching, this whole reading, and I don't read the readings on the air, as you know. So look it up in your own daily missal, whether it's the bound form, whether it's bible.usccb.org, whether it's The Way Among Us or Magnificat or some of the others. Look it up, see what it has to say, and read through it, and you'll see, and read through it in a prayerful way because it's a prayer, and you'll see this very powerful praise of the Lord. And remember, this is being done while they're standing in a fire. This is important, while they're standing in a fire. Little detail, don't forget that. It reminds me, I think I've told you the story of the man when I was at Oyster Harbors. I was a caddy at Oyster Harbors down in Osterville. And there was a man who used to park his helicopter on his front lawn, right behind the fifth tee. And I remember these guys were on the fifth tee, and they are visiting from someplace else, and they were admiring this beautiful lawn, and myself and the other caddies are looking at each other. It was through trees, so there was an excuse there, and saying, don't they see there's a helicopter on the lawn? You know, that little detail they didn't seem to notice. And finally, one of them says, excuse me, guys, is it me, or is there a helicopter on that lawn? So remember, they're looking through trees, so they can't see that. Well, it's the same thing. Don't forget that when you're reading this reading, they're standing in a fire. Aren't they standing in a fire when they're praising God like this? Yes, they are. White hot furnace. So it's a powerful message and a powerful truth. We're going to talk about a similar story that actually happened on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WEZE. We'll be right back right after this. Have you told anyone else about St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, here on WEZE in the early morning and through CatholicAudiomedia.com?
You realize we are a different Catholic program because we are not speaking just to Catholics.
We speak to ex-Catholics, atheists, evangelicals, and people from all different religious and non-religious backgrounds.
We do this from a Catholic perspective.
So you're not going to hear what you hear on other programs because we have a different mission serving Jesus Christ.
Tell your friends what we do here is different, and it is so that we all may experience Jesus, who sets us all free. And don't forget our own website, CatholicAudiomedia.com, that can connect you to the parish, St. Anthony and Allston. You can also listen to our program. You can tell other people where to find your program. You can also find our other podcast platforms, some of them. There are even more. And you can tune us in and listen to us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. So, one of the reasons why I tell the story is I always like to bring other little anecdotes in, and there's a fascinating story. Again, kind of what I was saying yesterday, very similar. This apparently comes from Siberia. And I remember reading this in a magazine, which I don't think is still around anymore, called What is Enlightenment? And it was the story of an Orthodox priest who was in prison in Siberia, in the gulags, because of his religious, his religious life. And there was someone else there who was there, and apparently there was some kind of a fight that was about to happen, and it was by this guy who was a real bully and everything else. And the Orthodox priest spoke up. And apparently what happened is the guy he spoke up against went and reported them to the authorities. Well, the authorities had a special punishment for anyone who stepped the slightest out of the line. And I think the what he reported was false. And what they would do is they would put you into a cell in Siberia in the cold. The law said you could be there for 24 hours. They were there for 48. But when they were put into this very special isolated cell, so it was outside of the prison, it was in the cold. As a matter of fact, Cardinal Minsky, I think was his name, died in a similar cell. Outside in the cold was designed to really have them suffer for what they had done. The two of them, the priest and the other guy, are in the cell, and the priest says to the other guy, start praising God, similar to what you see in this fire. So they start praising God, and now they are suddenly transported into a beautiful field, and that's where they are. And they are celebrating and praising God in this beautiful field. Well, after 48, it wasn't 24, even the law said 24, 48 hours, this superior of the guards there storms in and he goes, Moscow will hear about this. This is wrong and we can't allow this. And he runs out and he opens the door to let out the two guys who had been there for 48 hours in the freezing Siberian cold, and they walked out as if they just stepped out of a phone booth. And they were fine. And this is considered one powerful miracle, and especially in atheist Soviet Union. So you can see this powerful message, very similar to the same story that you heard, except obviously the temperatures are different and everything else. But it comes down and again shows the power of the Lord to those who are worshiping him in the face of those who either worshiping another god or reject him altogether. We're going to talk more tomorrow, and we're here every single Monday through Friday at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning here on WEZE 590 AM. So we'll see you tomorrow. Have a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation to the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.